Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Jan Freitag. I'm a Senior Vice President with STR and would like to share with you in the next 20 minutes or so the state of the global luxury hotel industry. I entitled my presentation 5 Things to Know. This presentation was already given live at the International Luxury Hotel Association meeting in DC a few weeks ago. But I think the 5 things to know still pertain to today's market. So let me jump right in. I would like to share with you a sense of the global luxury hotel space, and then zoom in on China and the Middle East, just specifically because there's a lot of new supply with very different outcomes for the local hoteliers. I want to talk about 6 markets and 6 cities specifically, and then at the end, focus on the US and give you a forecast on the luxury state of the US industry this and next year. With that said, everything I say is always available, the slides anyways, are always available on hotelnewsnow.com. We don't always talk about the luxury hotel space. We talk about certainly other areas as well of the US and of the globe. So feel free to check in frequently and see what the state of the union, so to speak, is. We start out by giving you a sense of the global luxury performance. I call this a mixed bag. Let me start out with a number that some people find fascinating and some people find rather useless. It is the global luxury RevPAR percent change for the first 8 months of this year. RevPAR is up. Yeah, that's great, Jan, but what does that really mean? Especially since this is in US dollars, there are probably currency fluctuations. So let's just say it's up. How do we unpeel this number? How do we unlayer this number? Let's start like most presentations at STR start with supply and demand. What you're seeing here is that for global luxury hotels, demand is positive. Yes, there was a great recession, but also yes, there was a strong rebound. And now overall, we're selling more luxury rooms than we did a year ago on an annualized basis. And you're seeing that number is, that line is pretty positive. It has been for the last couple of years. So demand growth. And at the same time, on the next chart, you're looking at supply growth. And what you're seeing here is that indeed, yes, we're building more luxury hotels. Not everywhere, as we can see in a moment, but overall, with new demand comes new supply. So supply growth is certainly the name of the game as well, globally. Now, breaking this out, and this is the supply percent change on an annualized basis by region. And what you're seeing here is that there's a very different story depending on where you are. In the Americas, almost no supply growth on the luxury side. Europe, very muted. But then Asia Pac, very, very strong supply growth. We see a lot of cranes. We see a lot of attention being paid to Asia Pac, and supply has grown 5+% on a consistent basis for the last 5 years or so. That is actually being outpaced by the Middle East and African region. Now, that said, there's a little bit of a misnomer. Obviously, there's very little construction in Africa. All the action is in the Middle East. I'm talking Dubai, I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, and that's where the action is. And you're seeing that supply growth has been double-digit at some point, and now it's 8+%. So very, very strong supply growth, and it's going to be interesting to see, as I will explain later, what that actually does to the RevPAR performance of those areas. Now, taking supply and demand into consideration, and the room rate growth then gives you the RevPAR percent change. And what I'm showing you are the 4 regions. It's just a very busy chart with all 4. So I'm building it and start with 2, Americas and Middle East Africa. What you're seeing is, yes, there was a great recession, but overall, very healthy RevPAR growth for the Americas and for Middle East Africa. And it looks like those lines sort of ease forward at about the same level. Overlaying here, Europe, what you're seeing is that, yes, the rebound was quite pronounced, double-digit RevPAR growth for a while, but then also this malaise that caught Europe after the Great Recession, with Greece, with Italy, with Spain, with Ireland, all of those markets not doing very well. And there was actually a demand drop and also then a price drop. What you're seeing here, though, keep in mind, though, that all of this is in US dollars. So the performance may have been stronger given the exchange rate fluctuations. So overall now, it looks like in US dollars, RevPAR is increasing again at a fairly healthy clip. And then lastly, overlaying here, Asia Pac, and that's really not a good story. Again, taking currency into consideration, occupancies have been stagnant or declining because of the new supply, and then room rate growth is just not there. Hoteliers don't feel comfortable increasing their room rate, and we're seeing RevPAR declines in the region. Zooming in on two specific areas, China and the Middle East, just because the supply story is so strong, I thought I'd focus on that. Let's talk about China. Demand percent change on an annualized basis out of the Great Recession for luxury hotels up almost 30%. Unbelievable demand growth. Obviously, those numbers are not sustainable. And what you're seeing here is that the growth rate slowed in 2012 and 2013, but have rebounded quite nicely through 2014. So demand growth for China luxury hotels is strong. With that, obviously, comes a lot of attention from regional players, from local players, from global players. And so supply is up, also a very healthy 9%. And then what's interesting is that you're looking at the RevPAR growth, and because the supply growth is so healthy, you're looking at RevPAR in dollars. It's basically flat. What I'm doing on the next two charts is I'm overlaying annual results for luxury hotels, and what you're seeing in the light blue is 2012 results, in red 2013, and in 2014 is the dark blue by month. And what it looks like is that the ADR is not really moving anymore between 2012 and 2014. What you're seeing is that the monthly results are basically the same as they had been in the prior years. So that's one side of the story. Strong demand, but also very, very strong supply growth, which then makes hoteliers a little skittish and they don't increase room rates as much. Now, let's talk about the Middle East. Stunning demand growth, and you're seeing here that the demand percent change is actually growing. So not only are we selling more rooms than we ever have, we're selling them at a faster clip. And coming out of the Great Recession, you would have expected a little bump, but certainly nothing like this. Overlaying here the luxury supply growth, I'm saying it's off the chart. It's certainly on the chart, 14%, but that's just a number that seems impossible to sustain. But that said, I have been saying that for 5 years, and I've been wrong for 5 years, so here we go. So demand is up strongly, supply is up strongly, and then at the same time, RevPAR growth is healthy to the tune of around 4%, contrasted to China, where RevPAR is basically flat or slightly down year over year. So I think that's a very, very interesting development. And then we're looking here at the 2008 results in green, looking at what happened prior to the big recession. You're seeing that 13 and 14 results certainly are not as strong as they were in 2008. That July number is certainly a blip in the calendar shift. So that said, those were the big regions and two specific areas. What I'm doing now is I'm focusing on markets, and I'm giving you six markets here: Paris, Dubai, Shanghai, and then 3 markets in the US, New York, Washington, San Francisco. Again, starting out like every time with the supply and demand interchange. And really the story on this chart is limited new supply in the Americas, strong new supply in Dubai, and that seems to be increasing. The pace seems to be accelerating. That said, I think the New York City numbers should give us pause, because that is a tremendous amount of new supply in one city, especially on the luxury side. Overlaying that, as we always do with demand, you're seeing a much more varied picture. You see some years where demand grew, some years where demand grew very, very strongly, but then other years that were basically flat. 2013 seems to have been sort of an off year for a lot of markets. What's interesting to note here, Shanghai, very, very strong. New York City, strong, but keep in mind, supply is up 6. So obviously that supply outpaces demand growth. And you're seeing Dubai, basically the same story, but amazing that they have 3 years of double-digit demand growth on the super high end. That is just incredible. Then the supply and demand change translates into the occupancy percent change. But what I'm showing you here is the absolute level of occupancy, just to make the point that with occupancies outside of Shanghai well above 70%, the luxury end is basically full. If you're looking at San Francisco, year to date, 82% occupancy, New York City, 81% occupancy, Paris, 75% occupancy. That really means that on a consistent basis, these properties, these high-end properties are full Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Saturday night, maybe Friday night as well. Monday, Sunday, Thursday are always a little bit tricky, but the business traveler that drives Tuesday, Wednesday is certainly there in force. The leisure traveler that drives Saturday and probably Friday is there in force. That is the only way that these properties can report these types of occupancies. You know, this is basically means they're sold out midweek and weekend. And then what does that mean for prices? Well, obviously, as hotels are full, room rates are going up. And by how much? Well, it's kind of hard to sustain this pace of sustained ADR increases, but you're seeing in San Francisco, it certainly is possible. You know, if you're running 80+% occupancy, it's basically a seller's market. What's interesting is because Shanghai has almost 4 out of 10 rooms available every night, not a lot of pricing power here. New York City, you're seeing that the pricing power is slightly ebbing just because, yes, the occupancies are still very high, but for some reason, New York hoteliers are always sort of skittish as the absolute level of occupancy hits the 80% mark. So not as much pricing power as you would have expected. And then you're looking at what are we actually charging, and these are in US dollars, the achieved ADR. Not a big surprise. New York City is the leader, almost $400. San Francisco, almost $100 below that. Interestingly, that Dubai, New York, sort of San Francisco, all seem to be sort of in the same ballpark. You know, it seems that almost as if the global luxury traveler has been trained to pay a certain amount, or that hoteliers all around the globe are saying, well, that seems to be sort of our sweet spot. Now, that said, you're seeing one city that is missing, which is Paris. And if I'm overlaying Paris here, you're seeing that their high-end ADRs are just in a completely different universe. Almost, I mean, it's not quite $1,000. I wrote an article on Hotel News Now a while back that you can find there, where I talked about the top 10 or 15 or 20 properties in each of these markets. And yeah, the ADR for the highest end of the highest end is well over $1,000. So Paris is certainly in a different universe. All right, let me switch gears a little bit and talk about the US. What you're seeing is these are the results for the first 8 months of this year. You see a couple of asterisks there for the key performance indicators, meaning these are the highest numbers we have ever recorded. More luxury rooms than ever available, more luxury rooms sold than ever, highest ADR ever, highest RevPAR ever, and highest room revenue ever in an 8-month period. What drives the industry here is the interplay between supply and demand, specifically the outpacing of demand over supply. And what you're seeing here is that room demand is up, it's kind of healthy. Room supply is up a little bit more strongly than we would have expected it at this point in the cycle. But still, demand is growing, which means occupancy is growing, and because the absolute level of occupancy is so high, 76%, that means one thing: pricing power. So room rates are going up to the tune of around 5.3% or so, and then you're seeing the absolute ADR 300, and you just remember I just talked about New York, you know, 400. So getting a luxury room in New York for $300, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. But on average for the nation, that certainly is possible. And RevPAR then is driven by room rate growth, which is exactly what you would expect at this part in the cycle, and we expect that to be correct going forward as well. Talking about ADR and how it impacts occupancy, or the other way around, how the changes in occupancy impact room rate growth. What you're seeing in purple here is the occupancy percent change line is slowing, but the only reason for that is because we're basically reaching capacity. It's hard to sell any more rooms if you're full Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. So what we're seeing at this point in the cycle is that really the growth of RevPAR comes from the room rate side, and you're seeing the light blue line here, 5.3%, looks like a steady line going further out to the right, going further out into the future. There's really nothing that would make us believe that that will end anytime soon. This is a little bit of a geeky chart, so bear with me as I talk you through. As I'm doing a couple of things here. I'm overlaying the absolute ADR charge in the US and the absolute occupancy achieved in luxury hotels in the US. On the right-hand side is the scale for occupancy. On the left-hand side is the scale for ADR. The ADR is charted in blue, and what you're seeing is that at the prior peak, pre-recession, we charged around $300, and that now we're actually exactly at $300. That at the prior peak, the occupancy was 73%, 72.7%, and that now it's actually 75%. So the U.S. luxury hotel industry has done remarkably well. Yes, we saw pretty heavy price cuts in the big recession, so from almost 300 down to 240, but we've completely made up for that. And you see that blue line is almost a diagonal straight line up to the upper right-hand side, and we don't expect that to change anytime soon. The red line, the occupancy percent change is now at 75. As I said, it's going to be hard to grow that going forward, but overall, this is a very, very, very good chart and very healthy indicators going forward. And then if you take ADR percent change and occupancy percent change together, you get to RevPAR percent change. And what I'm showing you here is that the RevPAR percent change last time, prior pre-recession, the last upcycle of RevPAR was 63 months. This time around, we're 48 months into it. So we probably have, what, another 20 months here, call that 24. So 24 months, we're now at the middle of, so the end of 14 would get us into the middle or end of 2016. That's sort of what most of the pundits look at and say, yeah, it looks like smooth sailing all the way through, the beginning of 2017 or so. So certainly, this is a very, very good chart. We expect that green line, that RevPAR percent change, to go forward on a high level. Switching gears a little bit and giving you a little bit more background on why we think it's going to be so good going forward. For the upper end of the market, we're asking, is the room that you're selling sold at increments of 10 or more, what we call group, or increments between 1 and 9, what we call transient? I'm talking first about the transient piece here. What I'm showing you is that the transient demand percent change is slowing. That's not a bad thing. As I said earlier, we're selling more transient rooms than ever. Hotels are really full. It's hard to grow based on these record demand numbers. So this line going downward just means it's slower growth. It's not less rooms sold. These are not absolute values here. I'm showing you percent change. So the growth is slowing. But again, of a very high level, because hotels are so full on the demand side, that means room rates can increase. And that's the green line, ADR percent change, well over 5%, probably in the tune of 5.86%. And we don't expect that to change anytime soon, because what you're seeing here is the demand percent change in gray for groups. And what's very, very important and positive on this chart is that the group demand has rebounded. We're now selling more group rooms than we did a year ago, and it looks like we're accelerating the pace of group demand growth. And that is healthy for everybody, because it gives hoteliers something to look for in their books when they open their books 90 days out, 180 days out, a year out, and they say, oh, I have groups here. That gives them confidence to increase their room rates on the transient side, But also, if somebody then calls and says, hey, I have a group for midweek, you know, and hoteliers or revenue managers feel already comfortable that they already have a cushion of other groups. They're like, well, you can come midweek, but you have to pay for it because I'm really full and I know the rooms I'm not selling on the group side, I will be able to sell on the transient side. So this chart is really important and really, really, really good for the industry overall. Let me finish up by talking about the forecast. Luxury ADR growth is strong. We're suggesting that this year luxury will outpace the nation by a little bit, not so much on the RevPAR side, just because we're suggesting that the supply demand is a little bit in imbalance. We may have to obviously come up with a new forecast now that we have September data, and we'll probably bump that occupancy percent change up just a little bit, but overall very, very healthy numbers for 2014. And then next year basically the same story. The high end is going to outperform what happens in the nation overall, but certainly both numbers, total US and luxury, are very, very healthy. So a RevPAR growth of around 5% is certainly achievable. So with that said, my 20 minutes are almost up. So let me tell you that on the supply side, it's a global race. Everybody is looking at China, at the Middle East, at Europe a little bit, not so much in the Americas. And that's where the action is. Demand growth, globally favorable. Your mileage may vary depending on the specific market and country that you're in. Then the ADR growth is either either healthy or very healthy, which all then together for RevPAR outlook and outlook for the luxury hotel space in general is, well, basically good or very good. With that said, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, email me at jan@str.com. Thank you very much.